What is up? This is Heather Winslow, a mom, comedian, interdisciplinary PhD student, and your host of the Healing Humor Chronicles podcast. For each week, we discuss the role of humor in empowering our narratives from the past. All right, we are live with our first Healing Humor Chronicles podcast. I'm so excited about this podcast. I've been wanting to do it for years. My name is Heather Winslow. Joining me today is one of my great buddies for a long time. This is Ethan Murphy. Before we start asking him questions, I'm going to give you an overview of this podcast. Since everyone is technically a first-time listener, including ourselves. Hello, this is very phenomenal. Anyway, so basically, this is a storytelling podcast. We're going to dip our toes into a little bit of storytelling improv warm-ups. Improv, for anyone who doesn't know, is when you make shit up on the spot. So there are some awesome exercises that you can do to warm up the brain, to get the brain juices flowing for storytelling mode. And then I'm going to start asking Ethan Murphy questions related to humor. Humor perception is my neuroscience research that I'm doing for my PhD at Virginia Tech. Holler, Virginia Tech, hey. And so basically what we're doing here is we're going to dive into the subject of humor, any and all things related to overcoming our past using humor. Can it be done? Is it done by everyone? So we're getting interesting perspectives from amazing people like my comrade here, Ethan Murphy, who I've known since 2012. Back in Charlottesville, Virginia, we did improv comedy together. Ethan, do you want to say hello to the void that is our potential audience?
I do want to say hello. Hello.
All right, that's Ethan. He is a delight. Ethan has overcome some hardships himself. He has dived into the wonderful world of storytelling. I'm super excited to have him here. He is a storytelling guru, and he might not admit to that, but he actually is one of the most inspiring storytellers I have ever met. Ethan, do you want to give a little bit of background information about yourself, how we came to not met, Jesus, and and give us a little bit of background about who are you? Who is Ethan Murphy?
Sure. Yeah, we did meet back in 2012. You were, so it was we had like I think it was the inaugural class essentially where James, Nate, and I were like the first with the new guys. There were some other people. And then once we actually were allowed to go into like, the main class with the real people, we saw you. And you were like the most welcoming person. You're like, hey, how are you? You were very friendly. James, I still talk about how like welcoming you were out of all those people. And yeah, so it's as far as like storytelling goes, improv is very much the reason I got into improv. You know it's already, Bobby. Heather, I'm sorry. For those who don't know, I call
We have some inside jokes.
Sorry about that. We have some inside jokes, but I will call you Heather. I'll call you by your Christian name while we're on this show. But
yeah, that's my birthright.
The reason that I got into improv, I think I told you before, maybe not, but the reason I got into improv was because I'm a comic book writer and creator, and I was dealing with writer's block. And I listened to some podcast it was called a show called Improv for Humans. And it had all the people from UCB, like Amy Poehler and Matt Besser and all of them that were there. Some really big names that were on this show, essentially back in the day. And they all said how improv doesn't give you the ability to have writer's block because while you're on stage creating, you have to create. You can't sit up there for hours trying to think up a character or a situation. You have to just go with it. And when they said that, I was like, you know what? That's what I have to do. I have to go ahead and get into an improv class so I can get my writing on track. And it helped. It really did help a lot. And since I've been, you and I did improv together for like, oh my God, like 8 years or something. Because I came back
something
from
like that.
first.
Yeah, on again, off again. But yeah, always
yeah, it was for a long time.
Yeah, I
And it
remember
really
when I first met you, you were so nervous and you were feeling a little imposter syndrome. And then you got on stage with, I think it was James, and you guys were doing a car. You were in a car. It was invisible because this is improv. But you guys were in a car together and it was hilarious. And I was like, this guy's a natural. This guy knows how to tell a story on stage, like making stuff up at the top of your head. And yeah, and I'm sure you saw like how you could like force stories to come alive from kind of being forced to, and then having someone like support you on stage is
No,
awesome.
exactly. Yeah, that's what it was. It was you mentioned it really. You hit the nail on the head there, Bob Heather. As far as how it's when you're on stage, all you really have is your partner. You don't have props, you don't have a lot of fancy cameras, you don't have multiple takes. It's just while you're up on stage in front of a live crowd, all you have are your partners. Or and so like the scene you mentioned with James, it was it was give and take. I had to trust him to kind of be there for me. And you know the rule, the central tenet of any improv scene is yes and whatever somebody gives you, you work with it, so to speak. So yeah, it's a great way to build relationships. It's also a great way to start learning how to trust yourself, which is something that lots of people have a problem with. I'm sure you know
Yeah.
this yourself too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Honestly, like it's been crazy the past year. This is the first year that I have not done any comedy since 2011, and it has vastly made me forget to trust myself as much as I should. And so that's very telling for me is that when I'm forced to go on a stage, like just me personally, and so this is another reason why we're diving into this cool podcast about like different brain types is like when I'm on a stage, it kind of forces me to step outside of myself and like let go of my ego and just be free in that moment, which is very hard for me to do in real life. So it gives me that window to just kind of jump in. And then I carry that with me. Like if I go to an open mic on a Monday, like I carry that I get, even if I bomb, just the doing something scared, and I pride myself on doing that and then carrying that with me throughout the week, and it does give me a boost of confidence.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's
That's
spiritual or not, but you know, whatever.
no, that's fantastic. I mean, doing improv, like I said before, you have partners, you have people to help you with it. Doing stand up, you're up there by yourself. It's just you, not versus the audience, but it's you and the audience, and that can be intimidating to anybody, even people that don't have anxiety issues or what have you. So yeah, mad credit to you. And I think you and I mentioned this a while back how somebody asked my students like, what's the opposite of courage? And most people say fear or some anxiety, what have you. And actually, all the opposite of courage is apathy. If because
Oh
courage
yeah.
is facing something that you're afraid of. You have the fear. The fear is definitely there, but you are choosing to do something despite it. Apathy is
Yeah.
where you don't care at all. So having the fact that you may get nervous before you go on stage. Everyone gets nervous, by the way. The fact that you may get nervous before you go on stage, or the fact that you may throw up before you do it, that kind of stuff. It means that you actually are a human being, that you do care about what you're going to do. It's a good thing. It's a good sign.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, amen to that. That's something that I have to explain to adults, not even children, but like adults frequently isn't, just because you're scared and like trust me, I know like if my brain is talking myself out of doing something, I will not believe the thought. I'll be like, okay, is my brain talking me out of this because I'm gonna be super uncomfortable for 30 seconds. And so that's like it's a good way to think about things that like, yeah, we are all pretty scared. We're all like children living on this planet, but we're doing things anyway, and like that means something. And I mean, like, I don't know. I'm all about like finding meaning in things these days. I don't know if it's because I'm getting like 40s almost, and it helps me carry on. But, yeah, so finding meaning in the story is
Yeah, I got you. I
really
got you.
important at this point in my life.
But yeah, you're right. It is something that it's almost, you feel like, oh, you'll grow out of fear, or you'll grow out of anxiety. Having those worries is something that children deal with, and it's like, no, it's adults deal with it too. We deal with it up until our dying day, oftentimes, and I do think it's a good thing. It means that you do care about what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for the
yeah.
fear.
I care a lot. But getting back on your story, so tell us a little bit about like how, after doing improv, and it kind of coincided, or maybe it was a little bit behind your writing of stories for like basically graphic novel. Is it graphic novels or comic books or both?
You can say either one. I mean, if you want
Okay.
to if you want to put your finger out, be fancy, you can say graphic novels, but comic books, same idea. Yeah.
Okay. And I remember the first one that I was introduced to, Slate and Ash, was really exciting. I was a 20-something-year-old and love zombies, but I also love like the bromance that you had going on in that. And did the improvisational training help at all with writing that comic and in the ones you did after?
First off, you remember my book. Thank you so much,
I
Heather.
still have it. I still have it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
I've
Yes,
read it to
that's
both
what
of
it
my
was for.
kids.
You did? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's wild. But yes, and yes, to answer your question, it did. It significantly did help. This one thing too is how how important the dialogue conversation is. Lots of times we would have one of Andy or our mentors, original mentor in improv's rules was you should, when you start a scene, never start with a question, and the people that are interacting should know each other from the jump. And so that helped me a lot as far as dialogue. It made it so that I was trying to write characters that had a familiarity with each other, whether it be confrontational or not, as opposed to hello, sir, how are you? How you doing? Making it seem actual, real people having conversations, not talking at each other, but talking to each other. So it definitely helped with that. It really did 100%. And storytelling in general, one thing is that anytime you do improv, there's always a scenario of some kind. They always say, find the funny, or spot the game. There's always something you're trying to do. And with each scene, it became important for me to make sure that every scene that I wrote had a purpose of some kind. If they were just sitting there, why are they just sitting here talking to each other? If they're in a car, where are they going? If they're having a fight, what are they fighting about? If this person has a crush on this person, what is it that he has a crush on her about, or what's he trying to say to her in this scene? Is he trying to act on it, or is there subtext or something else? But being mindful of the moment and being mindful of the characters became that much more important to me too after doing improv for many years.
Yeah, for sure. Which kind of reminds me of like how we can sometimes forget what we're saying during a podcast, and then so something that improv teaches you is listening skills as well. And I think that there's so many awesome lessons in improv comedy, to be honest. And I'm sure, and I know you moved to California, right? So how long ago was that?
In 2019, right before the
Wow.
pandemic. Yeah.
Oh, right before. Okay.
Right
Well,
before.
crap. So you moved there, and I know that you did some improv with the Groundlings.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
How did that differ? Was that a different style from the Charlottesville improv scene, or do you did that help at all? Was that in person? Can you
Yeah,
tell
it
me a little bit
definitely
about that?
helped. What's funny is how they're very similar in lots of ways to what we did. I got into the ground because I always had to audition to get into them. I got into the Groundlings. I trained with them for a little bit, and then of course, like pretty much a week after I got with them, the pandemic hit and everything shut down.
Oh
But I was
man.
still able to train with some other, like there was one guy, Adam Crow, amazing guy. Him and I still worked with some other people from the Groundlings, and we still did some scenes together for the fun of it because we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last, and then it kind of became more permanent. But he had been with them for a while, and so we knew. I was able to kind of see how they did things, and they abided by the same fundamentals that Andy taught us as far as trying to make sure that yes and is the most important thing. B, try to make sure that you actually know each other in some capacity. And one thing too, they also like to do is they like to have it that you always you want to start with your emotions more calm as possible because you want to have some place to go. You don't want to start off like at 11 because you can't go to a 15. That makes no sense. And another thing that they like to do too is they like to make sure you always are doing something, have an activity. So they oftentimes have the scene before the scene starts. They have you like doing, you're already like playing cutting down a tree, or you're driving a car, or whatever it might be, because it gives you kind of some context, or it gives you more things to talk about while you're in this scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gives you like a little bit of material to work with
Right.
while you're kind of starting from nothing, from scratch. And
Exactly.
and these are all like life lessons too, like, start calm in a conversation. I mean, I'm hearing like all kinds of different life lessons as you're explaining, like with the Groundlings. So I actually did an audition for the Groundlings because they had like a Saturday Night Live scholarship thing that I was really interested in, and I found out like you could do it, online. And so I did an audition, and one of the things they emphasized was being present in your stories, which I thought was really, because sometimes when you do improv, people make the mistake of like thinking too far ahead, but you're forcing yourself to be present by saying, I am doing this. And so when you're telling the story, you're there and you're living it, and you're looking around and you're explaining all that verbally, as if like the verbal words are written on paper, as if you were reading a story. And I thought that was a really interesting take on the storytelling aspect. And by the way, I did get in, but then
Yeah.
they wanted me to pay for classes, and I was like, no, thank you.
Yes, it's not cheap. Yeah, for those who don't know, it's not cheap. Yeah, yeah. Heather and I were fortunate. Our training was much more affordable back in Virginia. But
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. So yeah, well, thank you for explaining some of that. And we're gonna get a little bit more to the nitty-gritty storytelling of your life, less on the surface layer. I don't know why I get all like intimate with the microphone.
she was kissing the mic, y'all. They were
We're
getting
gonna
real
dive
into it.
we're gonna dive deep into some stories. But first, and let's all remember this is my first podcast. And I had COVID 2 weeks ago, so
Really? Oh no.
I did, and I may or may not caught, like, I get this like dry, like I don't have COVID anymore, but I still get this, like, if I talk too long, I start doing
Oh,
this really grouchy cough that
I'm sorry. I didn't know.
scares
Oh
people. Oh,
no.
it's all good. It's all good. It's from traveling in the summer. Okay, so we are gonna do a few storytelling improv games to kind of warm up the juices. If you like any of these games, you can try them at home with a friend or a partner. You do not need any experience to practice these things, nor do you ever have to perform on a stage. Like, you can do this to practice communication skills, telling a story, like if you're trying to explain some kind of research you're into to a an audience that isn't from that niche that you're a part of. So yeah, just listen to these exercises, and if you feel like taking any of this with you, like, go on ahead. It's really fun. It's gets you uh put in the present moment, that's for sure. So sorry if I explained that too long. So this first game that we're going to do is called it's called guided visualization. So what we're doing here is I'm going to have Ethan close his eyes, and what he's going to do is he is going to start thinking about various things, like people, trips, places, and events that he has lived in his life. And that is all material for storytelling, whether you do memoir, which is, a story of your life, or if you write fiction. This is going to give you some inspiration for those things as well. And we'll find out afterwards what inspired Ethan's writing a little bit more. So Ethan, I want you to find yourself in a place that feels safe. And what we're going to do here is he's going to think of a place that feels safe to him. I think safety is, or any kind of like positive emotion, like having fun, that can really like help to take the edge off of, not feeling like you're enough in the moment. So and then he's going to visualize this. I'm going to ask him a few questions, and then he's going to tell a quick story based on the inspiration from this. So, Ethan, you're in this safe place. Look around. What are you seeing?
Right. I am seeing my mom and dad's old couches that we've had for like 20 years. They they do not look like anyone should sit on them, but there is so much nostalgia that I can't help it. I also see a very old TV that it doesn't have bunny ears, but it probably should have.
And
And it
when he
has a
says
V.
bunny ears for the
Oh,
children, that means antenna. Okay, sorry to
that's
interrupt you.
right. That's right. And I see a VCR, which I'm sure kids have no idea what that is either, on top of the TV with a bunch of VHS tapes. And I
Okay, wow.
see a rack, an old rack that has a old Super Nintendo on it with a bunch of games and comic books, lots and lots of comic books.
Okay, that does sound safe. Do you hear anything? Are you hearing any sounds that are associated with this memory? It's
I
okay to say
do
no.
I
Okay.
do hear my dad outside cutting the grass.
Oh, okay, nice. And are you smelling anything? Any smells? Um,
I smell my mom upstairs cooking. And today she is cooking a stuffing for dinner.
oh wow. Okay, cool. Love stuffing. Okay, so you're kind of you've made a set. Um, he has built from his own mind, from his own memory, a set. When I say set, it's an environment. Um, And from this, I'm going to give you 30 to 60 seconds. I'm going to turn the timer on my phone, and I want you to just start sharing a story that is inspired. It doesn't even have to do with any of this information you provided, but whatever comes out of your psyche, I want you to please share it with us. And I'm going to set 60 seconds on the timer, but if it ends before that, that's totally fine. We're not going to force it. And go.
Okay. So, one story that comes to mind in this safe space was one of my best friends in high school. It's the basement of my parents' house. He was trying to. They all knew I hung out in the basement all the time, and he decided to. It was late at night. He wanted to scare me, so he took it upon himself to like get right around to like, the window of the basement so he could see me. And he called from like my old, very old school cell phone. He called the house line and told me that there was something going on outside that he needed to come out there and see it. So I went upstairs to like go see what was happening, and he knew where I hid the key to get into the basement, and he got into the basement, and so he got it there. And when I came back, like, of course there was nothing going on upstairs. I found out that I thought, oh, he was just messing with me. So I went back downstairs, and I sat back down like I casually was always doing, and I started to slowly hear like weird things in the basement. And he took it upon himself to to quickly turn the lights off, and then he like said boo or something, and it scared me so much that I like collapsed against the shelf where all the comic books and the video game system were. And then he couldn't stop laughing, and I can't remember if I like just peed my pants or what I did, but it was an invasion of my happy place, my secret place. And he of course did let me live that down for a long time. He got me good. He got me really good.
Nice. Awesome. Well, you can open your eyes now. I meant to tell you that earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, good job. And is that a true story?
It is a true story. I
Okay, I
can't remember all the
figured.
details, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So it's funny how like a story will pop into your mind. When's the last time you thought about that story?
Oh,
Just curious.
20 some odd years. Yeah.
See. Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I like that, that started from your safe space, and I can tell it was sacred.
It was
Yeah,
very nerdy.
it's very nerdy. Sometimes our friends will invade our safety, and we gotta roll with that also. Okay, so cool. um we have actually some time for one more game. How's this feeling for you? Are you feeling all right? Are you feeling
Yeah. I feel
okay?
at
Cool.
peace.
Okay, you feel
I
at
feel at
peace. So
peace.
he's like,
Yeah.
I'm storytelling, so
I'm high on stories, man.
high stories. Okay, so this next one is called Best or Worst. So this is kind of a fun, I'm going to say ding because we don't have a bell. We do, but I'm almost 40, as I mentioned earlier. I really like mentioning that I'm almost 40, but basically I don't feel like finding a sound effect button at the moment. So a ding it is. So basically he's going to be telling a story, and I'm going to say ding, and then the first ding is going to mean that there's a positive turn events. So this is going to show kind of like the curvatures of a story. And just in case you're not sure what a story is, I'm not judging you at all. No, I'm not going to mention that I wasn't read to as a child because my mom will take that personally. But I have read to my and I'm not better than anyone. So anyway, I'm getting a little off track here. But a story has a beginning, middle, and end. Usually a plot, some characters, sometimes maybe just one character. A story can be anything it wants to be, but the goal is to find the arc, which is that it progresses to a point, and then it can wind down a little bit, and then it can progress again, just like life, ebbs and flows. And then beginning, middle, and then usually an end. So hope I didn't over explain that.
That's
Ethan, how did you
perfect.
feel about that? Okay, cool.
That was well done. Couldn't have
Thanks
done it
for the
myself.
thanks for the validation. Okay, so in this activity, we're gonna get just we don't have an audience, so Ethan, what are you inspired to think about? Just a very popular location that we all know and love?
All know and love. Ooh, good question. Let's see. Um, I would say like I don't know, like an amusement park.
Okay. Okay. Back before I was in almost 40, I really loved roller coasters. Okay. So you're at an amusement park. He can do the story in first person perspective using I statements, or he or Michael or whoever he wants to talk about. So just start us out with a sentence, and I'm gonna like kind of interrupt you and go ding, and that will say positive turn of events. And then will you be able to keep track of that? What if
Sure.
I say ding? Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
I was thrilled that we finally made it to King's Dominion. The lines to get in there were pretty long, but I didn't care because it was early in the morning and we were going to be there all day or die
Ding.
trying. But then, of course, the guy behind me wouldn't stop talking. He started talking about how he was going to ride all the rides and how he was going to be the next record breaker. And he got more and more obnoxious. And he was eating this popcorn at in 6 in the morning, and it was on my
Ding.
ears. But then it turned out he had a really nice daughter, and his daughter was so cute that I couldn't help but kind of think, well, anybody that can create this can't be too bad of a person. So I started talking to her a little bit, and her and I decided we ride a ride together.
Ding.
So there we were inside the park. And the ride she wanted to ride, of course, was the biggest, scariest one. And I was a little afraid, but I couldn't see us because I was afraid in front of her. She was very, very, very cute. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to suck it up and ride this. And of course, she wanted to ride the ride in the very front, which is the scariest part of any roller coaster.
Ding.
But it didn't
Positive.
matter. But it didn't. But it didn't matter because as we got there, she got a little nervous too. So she grabbed my hand, and when she grabbed my hand, I was on cloud nine. It didn't matter what was happening. You could have shot me with a cannon, I'd be fine. So the roller coaster took off. It started climbing higher and higher towards the apex, towards the peak. But she was holding my hand,
Ding.
and then she let go because she was afraid. And as she let go, then it hit me. Oh my gosh, all the anxiety, all the fear. It was real. It was very real. This roller coaster was scary. I had no business being on there. What have I done? The life choices I've made were all terrible. They're all wrong. I'm going to die. I'm going to die a virgin. Not again. Why, God, why? And of course, so the first turn, we went down fast. And then faster, I could see myself turning blue. I could feel the vomit coming up. I went up on top of her. Not on top of her. She was so cute. What was her name again? I'm going to say Bridget. Was it Bridget? It may have been Denise.
Ding.
And then it cleared out. We were on the drop was over. We were kind of flattened out. We were going a little bit clearer. And she grabbed my hand again. Things were getting it was back on track, literally back on track. I thought to myself, you know what? This isn't that bad. This ride, how long can a roller coaster possibly last? It's got to be at least halfway through it with that one big massive drop. It seemed really clear. The skies were great. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, we're in the front row, but that's even better. That means we had the whole ride to ourselves. There were no surprises. I could see my whole horizons in front of me. What a great day it was going to be.
The end. I'm cutting off there because we got 20 minutes left. Good job. I have some questions.
You gave me a happy ending. You gave me a happy ending.
I did. I didn't want it to be like go negative. Like, then the cop saw that I was sitting next to this.
Then she died and she fell.
Really okay. Good job, Ethan.
That's awesome.
All right, so now we're getting into like the storytelling portion of the podcast. How are you feeling so far? Are you storytelled out? Are you ready to? Okay, so we're gonna dive and have discussion about humor perception. How interested on a scale of 1 to 10 are you about like psychology, your brain, like just that kind of stuff? And like give me an honest answer. Like it's okay if you're not at all, you know.
But out of 10, you said?
Yeah, one through 10. Like
I saw
10,
9
10
and a half.
Okay,
Yeah,
so you are
9.5.
interested in it. Okay,
Yeah.
so right there is an interesting perspective. Ethan is interested in the human mind. Do you want to kind of like explain from your perspective, like why it is you have that interest, or maybe there is no reason? Just
No,
kind of where you're at with that.
of course. So this is something you already know this yourself. So I'm bipolar, and so growing up, I wanted to learn more about what made me tick, why I was the way I was, why I had the emotions that I had, and in trying to get some research about into myself, it made me more fascinated with other people as well about what made them tick. And I had an old mentor and therapist. And I remember he said one of the things he said to me was that there is no such thing as normal or perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has something that they're dealing with, and everyone has something that makes them unique. That's part of our soul, so to speak. So I see in a lot of ways psychology is a study of the mind as well as the soul of individuals. And that also does tie into storytelling too, because you want your characters, uh, you want each character you have should have a unique voice, a unique perspective on in the story and in the world that they're part of. So it all kind of ties into each other to itself.
Okay. Yeah. Um, uh, so you're someone that I consider a funny individual. Do
Well, thank you.
you think that you use humor at all to help you, I guess, kind of figure out some of the challenges behind having bipolar disorder or any other challenges that life presented you, like, you know, starting from a younger age and as, growing older and everything?
100%, 100%. I think this is something you and I used to talk about before back in the day, how if you don't laugh at it, you'll cry. And it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, it's a sure it can be a defense mechanism or a coping device. I got you, but it's being able to humor. If you look at the funniest movies or funniest people, oftentimes what they're portraying, or even stand-ups, they're it comes from almost like a place of pain, so to speak, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to turn that humor or adversity into humor is something that is how we get through life. If you are not able to laugh at yourself or able to laugh at things that are going on, it will break you. It's inevitable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember getting in a just stupid fight with my husband. It was about titty mermaids.
What?
Yeah. And so
Fantastic.
like if I'm ever being like illogical, as I can be myself, I will do an act out of how ridiculous I'm being to help alleviate the shame that that comes with some of the stupid insecurities that I have about topless mermaid statues. There was a little context. So
I wish I could have heard that entire conversation.
I just
Uh,
wanted to say titty mermaids in this podcast.
yes, please. We had
Two
to rename
hours.
it. We had to rename it
Yeah. That might be hashtag titty mermaids, my friend, if
that.
I was good at those things. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. Young Ethan, tell us about the young child that you were, if you can remember, because I know I forget a lot of things from my childhood.
So my childhood, the young child that I was in childhood.
Yes, the young child that you were in childhood. Mhm.
So when I was a kid, I think I mean, I don't think I was too unusual. Like I said, obviously I was very much a nerd, but I didn't at the time. So I'm older, for those who don't know, I am older than Heather. I didn't call you Bobby that time. I'm older than
Mhm.
Heather. I'm 43. And
Okay.
back when I was a pup in the 80s and 90s, it was not cool at all to be into nerd culture. Nowadays, it's very common for kids to be into comics or manga
Hmm.
or that kind of stuff. So I was kind of had to be kind of a closet nerd, and I'm also black. For those who don't know, you can't tell by my voice.
What?
Um, and so it was very, very like unpopular to be. If you were black, you had to be into music and into sports, and that's it. If you weren't, you were labeled an outsider or what have you. So I basically was a closet nerd because I wanted to fit in.
Hmm.
And I wasn't the most pleasant situation, but I did what I had to do to survive, more or less.
Hmm.
And but all the while I was still reading comic books like crazy. I was still a huge film nerd and film buff. I read
Hmm.
books and everything like that too. But it was I guess the thing is it made me appreciate superheroes that much more because they all had for the most part, they had alter egos. They had to pretend to be one thing while they were something else. And the
Hmm.
king of that was Bruce Wayne. I realized even as a kid that Batman, for those who don't know, Bruce Wayne is Batman. Batman is the real personality, and his disguise is Bruce Wayne. He pretends to be a pretentious fop. When he's a much darker person. And I kind of felt the same way that I had to put on a good face in public and do all kind of things that I didn't want to do necessarily when in reality I want to be in my cave reading and studying in kind of nerdy stuff. So it's
Hmm.
that was a a weird roundabout answer as far as my childhood. It was good. I enjoyed it, but
Mm-hmm.
I learned the value of duality at a very young
Yeah.
age.
Yeah, wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's I think a lot of people can relate to that. And it's interesting um how we have these things that help us survive. And I don't really think of it as a survival mechanism. I think that it's just finding out how to live in this, sorry to take it too deep, is like how to live in this society. I think like with having PTSD also, I have PTSD, and for me, it's hard for people to digest, the hard things that people like. When you care about someone, it's hard to hear that they've gone through hard things, and it can be really hard to, but when I turn it into humor or turn it into a story that can make other people laugh or say like, oh man, I thought I was alone in that, like that really helps me kind of like feel, I guess, that sense that it's okay that I went through these things. And do you think that is a crutch, or do you think that's like a helpful tool in the tool belt, like to have to kind of utilize some of these ways to to live, like the duality thing you were saying? Like
Oh, sure.
do you think that's a strain? Like how do you feel about that? Or do you think it's
Yeah.
just like a part of being a human?
I think, I mean, yeah, it's definitely that's part of the human condition. Yeah, 100% there, Heather. But I think it can be a crutch if you deflect, deflecting, if you do not ever deal with what's bothering you, if you're always using humor to kind of escape a situation, as opposed to, like you said, surviving it or
Mm-hmm.
finding ways to deal with it. 100% it can be, but it can be an effective tool to help you kind of deal with it as well. For example, using improv or
Mm-hmm.
storytelling or having characters. You've read Slade Nash before. Thank you again for
Mm-hmm.
that. I think I may have told you before how that's meant to be, both those characters are meant to be the opposite, this both sides of me, of what I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a
Mm-hmm.
monster at times, and I felt like a person that was trying to use humor to deal with a weird situation. That's both the characters, so to speak. So
Mm-hmm.
humor, it can be, yes, it can be a bit of a crutch, and it can be an obstacle to getting to know somebody. I'm sure you've tried in your life, you've tried to get to know someone more intimately, and it seems like they're always joking about things, or we try to have a serious conversation, and all they want
Mm-hmm.
to do is joke about stuff. It's like that's not helping. It may even be in
Mm-hmm.
our own lives too, where we don't know how to deal with the emotions we're feeling, or we don't know how to deal with a person that's getting closer to us, so we just joke it off or laugh or what have you. I've done
Mm-hmm.
that myself. But it can be a way too, if you, as opposed to losing your mind, if you're dealing with some strenuous, some stressful things, to kind of be able to laugh at it in some way, or to make a jokes about it, or to even put your jokes into your work, your writing, or things of that nature. So it may be a bit of a double-edged sword, but I think that humor can definitely help in both regards.
Yeah, yeah. And I've noticed like in your writing, you definitely use a lot of humor, to kind of, but also it's serious. It's a good mixture of serious and humorous,
Oh, thank you.
with like fun jokes and punchlines and stuff like that. Um, yeah, but I agree with you that, if it's the only, like you're not getting to the nitty gritty at the same time as using the humor, that yeah, it can be like kind of a defense mechanism. But I think like something people don't think a lot about is like intentionality of
Mhm.
why you're doing it to begin with. Like if you have like a set intention before you even like get on stage, or go to a rehearsal for improv, or put your pen to the paper, like the intentionality of um using it as a tool to help people, I think. For me, I feel like then the meaning can be felt in a different way. And I don't think there's any like science that could ever prove that, like but that's kind of like where what I've been exploring in my mind with it.
That's a good point. Yeah, intentionality. Like, what is the motive behind why you're doing what you're doing, so to speak? Yeah, what is the
Mm-hmm.
motive behind why you're? Because even they say there's always a little bit of, there's always some authenticity behind every joke you make, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's always a kernel of truth, and yeah, I that it may be that you may say, oh, joke about it, for, oh my gosh, when I was a kid, my gosh, my dad was a monster. He would throw me out of the car, and you maybe say that as a joke. He threw you out of the car, but it may be, by the way, my dad was highly abusive, and I was a traumatized child. So it's what is the actual, like you're saying, what is the actual, what's behind the message, so to speak. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And like Yeah, so one thing I want to ask all the guests, and this is a big research question of mine, is do you think that I know you're more of a storyteller, but do you think that humor is something that can be taught to someone that never learned to utilize it from a young age? Do you think that's something
Hmm.
that can be taught into a person and
That's a man. That's a
dig
good
deep into your
question.
memory?
That's a really good question because it's kind of. I know that Andy and Jen, our old mentors, used to always say, and some, of course, they're trained to try to teach us that, but in some capacity, I don't know. And for one thing too, everyone's sense of humor is different. Of course, there are certain jokes that we all kind of laugh at, but in some capacity, like I said before, everyone's soul and everyone's psychology is different. So there are different things that
Mhm,
make us, kind of that ring true to us, or things we can relate to that make us laugh harder. But the idea of I guess when you're saying that humor can it be taught, can a person find their their funny and in
mhm.
a way to express it to others? I don't know that everyone has that gear. I don't know that it
Yeah,
can be taught. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you actually do teach improv.
yeah.
Have you ever had a you know how to get too many details, but have you ever had a student that, in your opinion, wasn't that funny and couldn't really understand the
Mhm.
mechanics of humor?
So there was, and this could be wrong because this is like my perception of the person, but as I remember, there was one person who was an adult and they're a scientist and they're very logical and so they wanted to take improv. They came to a lot of improv shows and they wanted to take improv classes. And I feel like it taught them to find their natural humor. And they weren't like I don't think they were a very like funny person in real life, to be honest. Like at least to my knowledge, unless they were like hiding that little fun, amazing secret in their pocket. But what I saw was like someone that was very serious and logical, and they even said that about themselves. And then through practicing of the improv, and one thing that they say like with improv is like don't try to be funny, and then the funny like naturally comes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and there's like a lot of case studies also go with like that people um like in their subconscious can naturally dig for that. So I think like if we were to do like a statistical analysis of it, that like 90% of people can be taught humor, and then
Mhm.
maybe there's like 10%, and I have no background for that at all, just from my there's no like case study to go with that, but just from like what I've lived and what I mean, I could totally be wrong, but so we're gonna do this like an interesting like research workshop where we try to teach humor to those who don't find themselves funny and see if it
Interesting.
can be something learned so that they can gain like that humor perception tool for storytelling.
Interesting. From what
Yeah.
you're saying, it sounds like in some capacity, this scientist, or he was a scientist, right? Or he's a man of science, this
Uh
the student you had.
it's a she.
Or she,
Uh-huh.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I don't want to be like too specific because they could
No,
listen.
this person, this. I'm sorry, I don't know why my chauvinist brain thought it was a dude, but this person,
You thought the scientist was a dude. That's very fun. We
the
can go into
doctor,
that on a different podcast.
the doctor's mother, this person that was essentially pretty serious. It sounds like this person had a gear in them and innately a
Hmm.
humorous gear that had just been undiscovered or untapped.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, and I think that may be it. So it's almost like if as long as the gear is there, it's about revealing it to the person and having that person, of course, reveal it to others. Almost like abs. They always say that abs. Everyone has abs, but they're oftentimes covered by like a layer of fat or what have you. I think humor maybe like let's be honest. Look, I'm 43. My metaphors are terrible. You know this about me. You know this about me for 12 years. Nothing's changed, but it may be something like that. That humor is in all of our bones
Some of us
somewhere.
want to cover abs so we don't intimidate others with our abs. It's just a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. It is.
Just
That's what I'm doing.
kidding.
That's what I'm doing right now with my
Yeah,
gut. Uh,
exactly. Exactly.
but yeah, that's. I'm curious how that goes. I'm curious if that is the kind of even the most serious person does have a funny bone in them somewhere.
Yeah, I think it would be like really cool to like try and test it. So let's try and think of like the most serious famous people we know, and do we think we could convert them to being funny? So I'm trying to think of some examples, and let's see if you can think of any that would make them more digestible to us.
I
Let's
mean,
leave out politicians.
yeah, no, that's like my brain. That's the very first place my brain went. Bobby was you know where it went. You know where it went
I
first.
was there also, and I was like, we're not going
Okay,
there, but we
there.
are all there
You
at the
vote.
same time.
We all
So
okay. As long as we all in
we're
agreement.
all there.
Let me see somebody else. So,
Let's just
here
soak that in, in our minds without actually saying what we're thinking.
I don't want to even think about it anymore. There's one thing. Here's one thing. Let me pose this question to you real quick. Are there people that you know? I'm sure there are that believe they are funny, that think they are funny to their core, that aren't.
Me?
No, no, no. You're definitely.
Oh man.
You're
Well,
definitely
none
funny.
of them think about it.
But you know what I mean, as far as there are some
No, I
people.
honestly do not know anyone at this moment in my life. I feel like I have known someone in the past.
Yes.
I'm not gonna, if I even
Yes.
mention my father on this podcast, people will be like, daddy issues. Daddy issues. So we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna talk about my father. But no, I can't think of
Daddy issues. Daddy issues. Fair.
for my
Fair.
critics.
Fair.
But yeah, I can't think of anyone at this moment in my life that thinks they're funny and is. How about you?
That I know. Well, there was one person that you and I both knew. Uh, we won't say their name. This person was a horrible person. I wasn't a fan of this person, but this person,
I don't know which one you're talking about.
yeah, I could probably describe this person a bit more, and you'd be like, oh, that person.
We'll do that when we hit
But
stop on the recorder.
yeah, we'll reveal it. But it's more or less. It's sometimes it can be a person who, let's say, for example, likes to use say a lot of inappropriate things, and they might
And or
think
mean, yeah.
and or be mean,
Yeah.
to or derogatory towards people, and they think that it's funny. They themselves may even laugh at what they're saying, but no one else in the room is, and people don't appreciate that. That kind of stuff can be upsetting. There can also be people like, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it before. You did stand up comedy for years. They're putting stand up comics, right? They go up on stage and they're performing, and they are bombing pretty hard. And it could be that too. It could be that you are not inappropriate, but you just don't know how to deliver a joke that is humorous too.
And that could just be like, not that they're not funny, they just don't have the joke formula.
Yes, it can be that way. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my things is like when someone does say something like, because not some people think comedy is just punching down on someone, like, and
Right.
like a lot of people, especially, like, no offense to the listeners, but boomers, sorry, I said it. They can think like, that all humor is like putting someone down, which I really don't agree with. But something that really grinds my gears is when someone says something asinine and they're like, it was a joke. And you like, that's like the cop out kind of card kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not
But
my vibe. I don't like that either.
yeah, because if you're a dick, just say I was a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. Just own it.
Moment of silence for that. Okay. Anyway, so like,
Moment of silence for the dicks.
Yeah, I don't really know, and that makes me feel very fortunate actually that I feel like a lot of people in my life are authentic and just try to be who they are as best as possible. And and I'm fortunate enough to know a lot of very funny people, and that's one thing that I really try to build up in people also, is like to let them know like you're funny, like especially kids. If they can hang on to like anything, it's like at least know no matter what, you might like not be accepted at school. Like my 14-year-old, for instance, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but he's a metalhead and he lives in a rural county in America. So
Yeah.
he's going to be an outcast. And in high school, that, never forget, you make people laugh. You make adults laugh. Like that's amazing. That's amazing. Like even
Yeah,
like little kids. My 6 year old, I have a 6 year old also, and yeah, like just praising the humor, if anything. You know?
100%. There's nobody that doesn't like to laugh in the sense as far as when you laugh, you're happy. It doesn't Laughing never feels bad, never hurts. It's like, oh, this is actually it's enjoyable. Or smiling, it's always enjoyable to do. So yeah, if you can, if like you said, if your son is able to make people laugh, that's awesome. That's great.
Yeah. So do you, so I have PTSD, which is, if you don't know, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And basically like everyone has gone through like some kind of trauma in their life. Like, I really do believe that like even like childbirth is trauma.
Of course.
But
Absolutely.
some people have like chronic traumas or like a huge shift of events that end up like kind of keeping, like one thing that I heard the other day was interesting is that the brain is designed to keep you safe and not happy. So like our brains will then come up with defense mechanisms to keep us safe. But actually what it does is it can like weaken your relationships with others. It can make you afraid of yourself and others. It can change and redesign, restructure the brain in certain ways. Do you think, like personally, that humor would help somebody like retell their story, like if they had like a really traumatic story, and like there are some like awful stories I've heard. Like one of the number one causes of trauma in America is grape minus the G.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's obvious. Yeah.
and you wouldn't think like you could find a funny story in that, but like I have actually heard like fun people tell funny stories about that, which is to me like a hard subject to even like hear about. But like, do you think that people could like truly learn how to retell their stories with like a new, it doesn't have to be a humor perception, but like a more empowered perception that helps them become the hero of their story? Like, what is your take on that before we wrap
100%.
things up? Okay.
100%. Yeah, 100%. It can definitely do that. You remember, you probably remember Susan Holland.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah,
her.
yeah, she came to a bunch of our shows. I told her I was meeting up with you. I was talking to her right before I came on the show, and she goes, "Oh
Awesome.
yeah, tell her I said hi." She said, "Tell Heather."
Oh.
But I was telling her a story about how, because for those who don't know, which would be anybody, everybody listening, except for Heather, I do have a disability also, and so it makes it hard for me to walk fast or what have you. And I went on a massive trip to Italy a couple weeks ago, and getting
Oh
back
wow.
through the airport
Mm-hmm.
was a nightmare and a half. And I literally had to like I had to have one person pushed me around one of those little chairs, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
through customs. Then another person kind of put me on one of those like giant like those go karts that they use to get around the airport, and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
it was a horrible experience. But then I realized as I was telling Susan the story, I
Mm-hmm.
was able to kind of inject a lot of jokes, and I was able to kind of like have fun with it and make it an experience. So even though literally it sounds, I know it sounds weird, it was kind of traumatizing to me then because I was worried I was gonna miss a flight, and also kind of
Mm-hmm.
humiliating being in that position.
Oh yeah.
But
Sorry.
telling the story to her, we were both laughing at it, we were both having fun with it, so to speak. So even in a milder example of a traumatic situation, being able
Yeah,
to
that's a
use
great
that
example.
to being able to tell a story that is fun and entertaining, I do think that's a good. I believe that storytelling can be therapeutic in that sense, and I believe sharing your story can be helpful to other people too.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So like not to get too much into it, but like indigenous tribes, even to this day, like use humor, like oral storytelling to help them like reduce trauma, like for the collective. Um, and I can see how you retelling that story and like adding in some laughter and stuff can help ease like, whatever humiliation you were feeling in that moment. Yeah, so I think that's a wonderful tool for it, for you in that moment. Also, especially since you are Batman, you are the Batman, and your body can sometimes tell you otherwise. Like, yeah, so that like the humor can like remind you that you are the Batman. Um, and yeah, I was at the airport. This is making me feel like an asshole. I was at the airport and I had a leg injury, and I was in my head like, grumbling because of my leg injury. Uh, so
No,
yeah,
that's fair. That's fair.
I
It's
I
fair.
decided to do the row machine before vacation, and then like tweaked my hip.
Oh no.
Old
That's
childbearing hip, and yeah.
that's
So
fair.
I'm like
That's fair.
hobbling through the airport also, like, and it decided to bring all 5 kids because I have 2 kids and then 3 bonus kids, step kids, and all 5 are like walking all ahead. And I'm just like trying to keep up with them and trying to keep them from getting snatched. And it was
But see, right there. I'm sure in the moment you weren't happy that you're having to go to the airport with the pain. But now telling the story, it is it is more humorous, and you injected humor into it is more funny. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
dig it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got to go to Italy regardless. I hope it was worth
Thank
it.
you. Where were you guys going in your trip?
Oregon, yeah.
Oregon. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like the Italy of America.
The air was so fresh. Oh my gosh. And then like got off the plane in Baltimore and it was like
Oh
thick and
yeah, hold
hot and it was like soup from hell and
on. It's like
made me want to
soup
go
from
back to
hell.
Oregon. Made me want to go back. Um, well, thank you, Ethan. This was a pleasure getting to do this interview with you. You were my first guest,
I'm
which
honored.
is super awesome. Um, I'm really excited that we got to do this. And thank you all who have chosen to listen. You can catch me in Charlottesville. I am teaching the class called Improv for Misfits. It's for anyone who feels like an underdog in their life and wants to know the neuroscience behind some of the ways their brain works, and learn some storytelling to help empower their stories from the past to give you a different perspective of your stories. So I'll give more information on that once I get the day approved. um, and I will be doing this podcast once a week. And just stay tuned for some of the fun research coming up as I, try to make lemonade out of some of the lemons handed in life and figure out this complicated brain and maybe help someone along the way. So thank you
Yeah,
all so much, Ethan. It
yeah,
was
of course,
wonderful
my
to see
pleasure.
you.
It's an
All
honor.
right.
This is great. I loved it.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you back on and talk more
Absolutely.
about this. All right. Well, thanks. See you all later.